Hi there, in this video we're going to be taking a look at variables within the Key Stage 2 computing programme of study and how it's got progression within the Purple Mash scheme of work. An important thing when we talk about variables is to understand what they actually are. Now, if you think about variables in maths, you might be thinking about something like this, where we've got x's and y's within functions. If we think about variables in science, we could be thinking about independent and dependent variables and control variables within investigations. In computing, though, a variable is a place to store information, and we can give that place a name. Children first come across the idea of variables or changing things in Key Stage 1. If I just go into design mode here, you can see I've just got a very simple setup. I've got a dog and I've got a shape here. Now when I click on the dog, you see we've got this property here, and the object has properties. So the dog has a y coordinate. If I change the y coordinate, it changes the dog's position on the screen, as you can see. If I change the dog's scale, here, the property, I can change the size of the dog. So what I can do is all of these are accessible by code. So if I leave design mode here and I say that when I click on my animal 1, which is the dog, then I want my animal 1 to get bigger. So it's just add 10 on the scale. And when I click on my shape, I want my shape to increase the number of sides it's got. So let's just say sides, add 1. So children are used to this. When we press play, through using events, we can make the dog grow or make the number of sides on the shape change. No explicit variables declared here. We're simply accessing an object, which is the blue part here, my animal or my shape, and then a property of the object, which is the purple box, and we're changing it with a maths box here and a number. So varying or changing things within code is new to the children. Sorry, is not new to the children, I should say. Now, variables become explicitly taught when we get to year 4. And one of the ways in which it's taught is using this two-code activity called Genie. Genie comes in different stages, and we're just going to look at the first 3 parts of this. So it tells us to create a number variable called count and set it to 0. So to do this, we just drag the create variable block into the screen, and then it's saying what type of variable are you thinking about, because the computer needs to know whether we're going to store numbers in our variable, in which case it can do maths, sums and things with it, or if we're going to use a string, in which case the computer is going to treat it as text. So it needs to know that. We kind of know it automatically ourselves and just make assumptions without thinking about it, but the computer needs us to spell it out. So it's a number variable. I'm just going to change the name here to count, and we're going to put an equals 0 in the end. Now, what have I done here? Well, in the computing scheme of work, in the slideshows that we have, we encourage you to, within this lesson, to play a team quiz. And the way of keeping score in the quiz is to have some boxes or empty trays. And you get your box or your empty tray and you put a label on the side of it, just on a post-it note perhaps, that says Team 1 score and Team 2 score, like you see here. Now, these empty boxes can have a number in them in this case, because it's a number variable. So when you go through the quiz part of the slideshow here, if a team gets a quiz, then they can come up and they can put a number into the box, which is their score. So they start off on 0. If they get a question right, they can put a 1 into the box. If they get another question right, they put a 2 into the box. And children will often think they can just keep on piling numbers into the box, but they can't. They have to take the number that's already in there out. You can only put one value into a box at a time, and that's a really important thing for the children to understand. And it helps them to get that. So play that game within the year 4 slide to help them understand the variables. Now, once they've got that idea in their head, what we've done here is the orange box that says var create. That's getting the empty box. Number is just spelling out to the computer what kind of data we're going to put into it. The blue label count here, that's just like putting a post-it note on your box so you know whether it's for team 1 or team 2. It's just a label. And equals 0 is just the value we're going to put in there to begin with. So it's pretty straightforward, really. Press play, and it's happy, and it's telling me to do the next challenge. Now, the next challenge in this case is about this lamp, because what we've got here is a lamp, and we want to click it 3 times, and then it'll turn into a genie. Now, how do we know how many times we've clicked it? Well, a variable can help us to keep count, because we can store the number of times we've clicked it in that box. So here's how it works. We've got the number set up already. We've got the box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when we click the lamp, we're going to change the variable. Notice it's not create this time, but it was change variable, and it's saying which variable do you want to change. Well, I've only got one, and it's called count. And we don't want to set it to something. We want to increase it. We want to add 1. So we're just going to click add and then say 1. So let's just read this through. We're creating a variable called count, which is going to hold numbers, and setting it to 0. And every time we click the lamp, we're going to increase the value by 1. Let's press play. So when we press play, when we're using variables, you can see down here in the variable watch box down here that it's telling me that count is currently 0. And if I press the lamp, it's increased to 1. Press it again, and every time I press it, it increases. Now what we do for the next part of the challenge is we say we want to check when the variable equals 3, we're going to turn it into a genie. So we're just going to pull in an if statement here, and straight away it's saying if what equals what. Well, we're just going to select count and put in here the number 3 using our keyboard. So if count does equal 3, then what do we want to happen? Well, we want to change the lamp. So let's pull the lamp object in here, select its image, and tell it that we want to change the image to a genie. So let's read through that. We're creating a number called count to keep count, a variable of type number to keep count, and setting it to 0. And then it's all about this event. When we click the lamp, we add 1 on to the value, and we check if it equals 3, then we change it to a genie. Let's go. So count equals 1, click again, count equals 2, you see, click again, and we've got a genie. Fantastic. So we've used a variable to help us keep track of how many times we've clicked it and to make a change. Great. We can go through to the debugging challenge, which involves attention to detail, because essentially what this is doing is reversing it. We've got the genie, and the count is initially set to 3, and when we click the genie, we're adding 1, and if the count equals 0, then put it back to the lamp. What's difficult about that? What's gone wrong with that? Well, this is where attention to detail comes in, and it might take, you might need to encourage children to really focus on the individual parts of this and really scrutinize it. It turns out that what we need to do is we don't need to add 1 each time, because at the moment if we click the genie, the value is going up. It's never going to get to 0, is it? So we need to subtract. So we click on the add and change it to subtract, and now it will work for us. There we go. So once children have done that in year 4, we move on to unit in year 5, where in lesson 6 we're starting to look at something called text variables. Now the text variables, I've got some code already on the screen here. It works in the same sort of way as number variables, but you see here it says create string called my name equals Archie. So the string is simply telling the computer that it's going to treat the information in that box as text. So we're not necessarily going to be able to do sums with it or subtract or add to it, but we are going to be able to print it onto the screen and join other things onto it. So what this is doing here is we're first of all setting up a box, a variable, and we're calling it my name, and we're putting the value Archie in it. We're also setting up a box that can hold a string of information, of text, and calling it my animal and leaving it empty. Then we're setting up a timer that every 2 seconds it's going to put into that my animal box or set the value of it to a random animal, and it's going to print that out to the screen. Let's see it work. So we've got monkey, dog, dog again, monkey again. Doesn't seem very random. Where's the cat? There's the cat. Okay, I do believe it's random now. Okay, so let's press stop on that. Now, where does this go? Within year 5, we take it a little bit further because we want to print these variables out along with other things. Now, on here, let me just check my notes. We've got this this going on, and every 2 seconds we're having the my animal set to a random animal, and then we want to print a sentence out using that. And one sentence here is saying print to screen my animal, and then a space, plus random verb, plus with my name. So it could say, for example, monkey chats with Archie, or it might say dog runs with Archie, or cat runs with Archie, cat sits with Archie, something like that. It's going to follow. And we've got spaces in here, and we've got plus signs that join all the bits together. Let me show you how we make one of these, because the first one here is, if the animal's dog, then we want it to be the other way around. I want it to say Archie runs with the dog, or Archie eats with the dog, or whatever it's going to be. We're just going to swap the structure of the sentence around. So on here, we need a print to screen block. So let's pop that in there. So I want it to start with my name. So it's going to print to the screen my name. Now, I need to have a plus in here. And then I just need to put a space into this box and press plus again. So you see it's put that empty space, and it's going to say my name. So it's going to say Archie. And then what I want is my random verb, don't I? So I need my random, click on here, verb. Then I need to click another plus. So I'm just hunting those pluses to keep adding onto this sentence, or to concatenate is the computing word for it. And I wanted to put the word with in here, didn't I? And then we'll have another space after that, and a space before it. We'll have another plus, and then let's put my name. Okay, so we've got quite a lot there. Let's click into the black. So let's press play. So if it does choose a dog, it should start. Now, where have I gone wrong here? It's saying Archie ran with Archie. Archie jumped with Archie. So why is it doing that? There's something wrong. Let's take a look at this code here. So I've got, if the animal equals dog, then print to screen my name plus random verb plus with, oh, my name. And I should have made that my animal, shouldn't I? So attention to detail there with the more variables you have, the more attention to detail is needed. Otherwise, little mistakes, deliberate mistakes, of course, can happen like that. Let's watch it again. So we've got that selection in there. So Archie jumped with dog, cat walked with Archie. Fantastic. So if it's with dog, we've got Archie starting the sentence, and if it's with another animal, the other animal starts the sentence. Okay, so we've got that. So what we've looked at there is the idea of string variables, and we've also looked at concatenating or joining them together into print to screens. Now, the progression moves on when in year 6 we look at something called functions. I'll just shrink my screen a little bit. Oh, I can drag it over, can't I, like this? There we go. Now, functions are... A function is a block of code that you can run whenever you need it. And a function could be, it could be drawing the side of a square, or a function could be drawing a flower, and you could just say flower, and it'll draw a flower for you. So it's for a job that you need to happen over and over again. Now, quite basic, let's just look at a really basic example of it, and then we'll sort of push the limits a little bit. So to create a function, we say create a, not number, not string, but now we're going for function. I'm just going to call it my function 1. So it says challenge in 2 code, a function is create a variable and set the type to function. I've done that, so let's press play. And it should be happy and let us move on to the next challenge. Yep. Drop some code into your function. So it's saying print something and play a sound. I need to do these in the right order, otherwise the sort of automatic marker in Purple Mash won't think I've got it right. So let's just print something. Let's just print the word zap, and then we can have a zap sound afterwards. Drop that there. We'll have one of them. We'll have it playing once, and let's press play. Notice it doesn't print the word zap or play it because I've not actually run this. All I'm doing is saying what this function is. I'm telling it what the instructions are. But to make it happen, I need to do something called calling it. And that comes under the change variable block here. So let's drag it in. And I've only got one variable called my function, so I can choose that. And the only thing I can do with it is call it. Now call it means the computer is just going to call this function to run, to execute it. So when I press play now, because we've called it, we have it printed on the screen and we heard the zap sound. Now I can call it as many times as I want. I could, if I want to, I could have my function call again and again and again whenever I want it to appear. Now I wanted to just sort of push it a little bit further here, because I work with some year 6 children who need a bit of a stretch, and we can actually do some quite advanced things in here which will keep bright children interested and entertained. So let's take a look at some of these. What I want to do here is I want to find the square numbers, the square of numbers up to 15. So I've just got that printing on the screen. It's just coming up over here. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, what I need to do is I need to find a way to count up to 15 and then to square whatever number it is that I'm on. So let's have a look at how I can do that. I'm going to obviously need to create some variables. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a basic variable to begin with, which is a number, and I'm going to call it count or counter. And I'm going to set it to, I'll set it to 0 to begin with. Then, just building this up, I'm going to have a repeat until. And I'm going to say repeat until counter equals, or let's say is greater than 15. So it'll do it whilst, it'll do whatever's in this box while it is 15, but as soon as it gets to 16, it won't do what's in the box. Now, what do I want to happen? Well, at the moment, let's just get it to print out to the screen what the value of counter is. So if I press play now, it should just count up to 15, but it's just saying 0, 0, 0, and it's never stopping. Can you see what I've not done? What do I need to do to my variable here? I need to change it. I'm never adding 1 to it, so I need to click on to change the variable and put this into the loop. Let's pop it there and say with counter add 1, and now every time it goes around this repeat loop, it'll add 1 on. Press play. There we go. It's counted up to 15. Great. So what I want to do now is I want to find a way of squaring that number. So I want to take counter, the value, and multiply it by itself. And I want to do that 15 times. So it's a job that I need to do over and over again, isn't it? So that's an ideal thing to use a function for. So I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to do it up here at the top. So I'm just going to drop it in here, and it's going to be a function. It's going to be called squared. Now, what do I want squared to do? I want it to print something to the screen. I'm going to put my print in here instead of down here. And what I want to do is say print to screen, let's have counter, and then let's add something else on there. Let's say squared is equal to, put another space, add this on, and then with a bit of sort of funky mathematics that goes on behind the scenes in the JavaScript that's powering this, we can put counter times count, so I can read it through like that. My function squared simply prints to the screen counter, which could be 1, 2, 3, squared is equal to counter times counter. And instead of, now that I've put that job over to a function, down here I don't necessarily want to have counter, I don't want it printing to the screen, so let's delete this. Instead, what I'm going to do down here is call the function. So let's change the variable, drop it in here, and we're just going to say squared call. So let's read through this now and just make some sense of it. So after the sort of opening comments here, I create a number, a counter variable, which is a number, and I set it to 0. I also set up my function, which is squared. Now my function is going to just print to the screen whatever the value of counter is, and then add the text squared. I'm just going to put a space at the beginning of that, is equal to, and then check there's a space at the end of that. Yep, there is equal to, and then counter times counter. Okay, and we're going to do that, repeat until the counter is greater than 15, add 1 to it, and call it. Let's press play. And then we go, sort of as if by magic, we've got our function to do a job over and over again, which is squaring the number. Now, you could say, well, why didn't you just put this print to screen thing in here instead of call the function, because that would have the same effect, and it does. It does exactly the same thing. But I suppose when this is really valuable is if, supposing we don't want to print it out every time, supposing we only want to print it out for even numbers, we only want to print it out if count is equal to 2, 4, 6, 8. That wouldn't work if this was that, because we've got no way of knowing whether it's an even number. So what I can do is I'm going to put an if statement in here. I'm going to say if counter. Now, I don't want equals. I want to say if counter equals. It's here that I want it. I want to say if counter mod 2 equals 0. Now, what this does is this is basically saying if counter divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, and that's a way of testing if it's an even number, then let's print to screen the counter information. So if I press play now, can you see it's only printed out the information for the square numbers when the number itself, when count is even. Again, why bother doing this in a function? Well, we can call a function from anywhere. So I could put something like, I could put something on the background. I could add onto here, when clicked, background, let's do something else there. And we could call the same function. When I click the background, let's squared call. And we could also, if I click the background, we could make it reset to 0, for example. So change this counter, or set it to another number. I could set it to say 6. So what I've got here is I'm sort of recycling the code that's in the function here. I'm using it within my first loop for repeating until the counter is greater than 15, or just randomly, if I click the background, it will churn out the answer as if it's 6. So if I press play and then I click the background, it's going to say 6 squared is equal to 36, because it's running this bottom bit of code here. Now, all I'm trying to show you there is that you can call the function, you can recycle that code and use it from all sorts of different places in your program, and it will still work. So it's a good way of coding something once and then being able to use it lots of times from lots of different places. Folks, we've taken quite a tour through the curriculum there, going from how variables begin with object properties in year 2. We've taken a look at how number variables are introduced in year 4, text variables in year 5, and functions crop up in year 6. And we've had a bit of a ramble and a look at how they can work, and looked at the the modulus check as well on there. Hope you found it useful, and thanks very much for your time in watching.